You can see my screen, right?
Yes,
Okay, so today's session is basically on the identity, governance, privacy, and compliance. So each and every organization or enterprise have some rules and regulations which they follow. Like in our organization also, we have certain rules, regulations, and privacy things that we should follow. Like we can access TCS environment from VPN only and the organization's assets only. So something like that compliance are there. So in Microsoft Azure also we can uh, draft our own privacy and compliance policies and all the governance things we can configure in Microsoft Azure. So let us see what is there in today's session. Yeah, in today's session, we are going to talk about Azure Identity Services, like basically on Active Directories, user roles, okay, and Microsoft multi-factor authentication, single sign-on, conditional access, role-based access control, locks and tags, policies, blueprint, okay, and custom application firewall. And in Azure Privacy and Compliance, we are going to talk about the privacy statements and all online service terms, Trust Center, compliance documentation, Azure sovereign regions. So these are all topics we are going to cover today. Let's start with core Azure Identity Services. So what exactly identity services are? Like it contains like authentication, authorization. We have to discuss about Azure Active Directory, its functionality and usage, and functionality and usage of conditional access, multi-factor authentication, and single sign-on. So what is authentication and authorization? So authentication is if there is some, for an example, there is an application which requires user to provide username and password. So the process of identifying the authenticated user or authenticated user, whether he has access to the application or the resource or not. So like we provide username and password to the user, and if the correct user provides correct information, then uh, in that case the user is said to be authenticated. See, you can see the user here, and it provides his username and password. If everything is correct, then he is authenticated. So the definition says identify the person or service seeking access to the resource. Okay, the request legitimate access credentials. So if he gives the legitimate or the original access credentials or the proper credentials, then only the authentication will happen. Basis for creating secure identity and access control principle. This is because we want to create an secure environment and provide an secure access control. So that's why we do authentication. What does authorization means? Authorization means if at all the user is authenticated, but he should have some particular accesses. Like for an example, a normal user should not have an admin access, or manager role user. A normal employee level user should not have manager level access. So all these things we take care during authorization. So all of you might be aware of like what authentication and authorizations are, but for just revision purpose, it is like just a second. Yeah. So it is like just a quick review what authentication and authorization are. So what authorization is, it determines an authenticated person's or service level of access. So using authorization, we can check what level of access he has. So based on that, he can perform certain activities. It defines which data they can access and what they can do with it. Okay, so it is self-explanatory. Next one is multi-factor authentication. So as you all are aware, whenever you log into our client or our organization's email or any of the resources, so when you log in, it will ask you to give some OTP. So OTP is nothing but an extended set of authentication. Like you have already given your username or password, but anyone else could have known your username and password. So to and as everyone have their mobiles nearby whenever they are accessing anything. So at that time, what multi-factor authentication does is it sends an OTP or it gives an call or it can scans retina or these are the example of multi-factor authentications. So, using the multi-factor authentication, we can enhance the security of any system or an environment. So, as per the definition, it provides additional security for your identities by requiring two or more elements for full authentication. For full two or more means one is your username password and another one is your OTP authentication. Something you know plus something you possess equal to something you are. Something you know is your username and password. Something you possess is your phone in which you get the OTP, and something you are is combination of both. Okay, so this is all about multi-factor authentication. What is Azure Active Directory? So as you know, like we have something called as LDAP. LDAP is a lightweight directory access protocol. So the same protocol is being used in Azure Active Directory. So it is nothing but you can say in simple layman's language, a database for storing users information like username, its password. Password is not visible to anyone other than means in that Active Directory nobody can see, even admin cannot see any user's password. So password, email ID, and other personal details uh, are stored in Active Directory. And based on Active Directory, there we can also store the roles and responsibilities. So whenever any user is logging in, so the first request goes to this Azure Active Directory. There only the Azure Active Directory checks whether the user has the proper, whether it is the proper user or not, first of all. And if it is a proper user, that means authentication is done, then it will check for authorization, like what level of accesses this particular user has. So this is the main functionality of Azure Active Directory. So as per the definition, Azure Active Directory is Microsoft Azure's cloud-based identity and access management service. Okay, identity for authentication and access management is for authorization. So what all it contains is authentication, employees sign in to access resource, single sign-on, like when you sign in to your Outlook in our client's environment, then if you want to open MS Teams or SharePoint or OneDrive, so all these applications are interconnected using single sign-on. So again and again, you don't need to give your username and password. So this is called a single sign-on. Application management, so we can manage our applications also, like uh, which app which applications has username password authentication system, so we can configure those applications in applications for Active Directory authentication and authorization. Next one is business to business. For an example, uh, there is a project running somewhere, and two different companies or two different vendors are working on the same project. So in that case, uh, the company has to provide access to different vendors so that they can work on. So this can be achieved using Active Directory, Azure Active Directory, so that we can using Azure Active Directory, we can give access to our environment to someone else who is working for some different organization. Okay, so this is one thing. Second thing is business to customer identity service. So someone uh, for an example, we are developing a solution wherein customer has to access from outside world to provide some data or input. So in that case we also can provide access to customers for accessing our environment. device management. So we can also manage our devices which are available in the within the organization. For an example, in our organization, like multiple employees are working and they have their own laptops and desktops. So each and everything is maintained within Azure Active Directory. Like when you log in, it goes to Azure Active Directory and checks for authentication and authorization. Based on that, you log into your laptop or desktop. So like it are like the same way we have something called as Azure policies, which I will discuss in the later classes. So what Azure policy does, for an example, you need to change your password every month in our organization. So this is kind of Azure Active Directory policy. So this comes under device management. Some has like handheld devices like tabs or some other devices. So this also comes under device management. What are conditional access? For an example, uh, you are a simple user and you want, so that means you are not able to install anything on your laptop. But the requirement is that you should have admin rights to install a particular software by your own without anyone's help from the uh, internal security IS team or someone else. So what you do is you yeah, you raise a ticket to have admin access for say 2 hours or so, so that you can by that time you can install your application or something like that. So in that case, the Azure Active Directory admin, he will give you an admin rights for 2 hours, that to perform installation of a particular application. So such kind of access levels can also be provided using conditional access. So this is a kind of condition. So if that condition is met, you will be able to access particular resource. So what does the definition says is conditional access is issued by Azure Active Directory to bring signals together to make decisions and enforce organizational policies. So what comes under it is users or group membership, IP location, device, application, risk detection. Okay, so signals, you can see your signals, either user or location. One more conditional access you can understand in that way is like if the user logs in from particular location, then only he should be able to log into this environment. For an example, if I have access to log in from India, and if I try to on my laptop, and if I try to log in from US, then it will not allow me to log in, and it will straight away send an alert to the admin saying that this particular user is logging from someone else. Just look into it. So this kind of conditional access also can be provided. Moving forward, Azure governance methodologies. Any doubts till now in Azure Active Directory?
No, this.
Okay. So what we are going to learn in Azure governance methodologies: role-based access control, resource log, tags, Azure policies, Azure blueprints, cloud adoption framework for Azure. So these many things we are going to cover in this module. Explore role-based access control, RBAC. So as I said, like we define roles and user groups. Based on that, particular role can access particular application or resource. Like so, as per the definition, fine-grained, it is an fine-grained access management. It segregate duties within the team and grant only the amount of access to users that they need to perform their jobs. It enables access to Azure portal and controlling accesses to resources. So within a team, every member should not have the same kind of roles and responsibilities, right? Like someone should have access to the database only, someone should have access to the application servers only, or someone should have access to both. So based on their roles, we can provide accesses to the resources based on their roles. So this is the role-based access control methodology. Next one is resource lock. So what resource lock is? So as the name suggests, lock means something you can lock and nobody else can open it. So Azure provides two kind of locks within Azure. One is deletion lock and one is read-only lock. So as I already showed you the resource group and resources. So if you provide any kind of locks, for an example, if you provide a delete lock, no one else can, no one or the admin itself, he cannot delete that particular resource. So this is kind of accident prevention kind of thing. Uh, so nobody can delete that resource. Second lock is read-only lock. So what does it do is it provides only read-only access for the particular resource. Like if you have created any resource, so only admin can use the write option and others will have only the read option. And there is one more concept, like there can be more than one locks uh, within a resource. Like you can provide two locks. You can provide delete lock as well and you can provide read lock as well. Okay, so what definition says is it protects your Azure resources from accidental deletion or modification. For deletion, it will be like delete lock, and for modification, it will be like read-only lock. Manage log at subscription level, resource group level, or individual resource level within the Azure portal. So let me see if I have any resource there. I can show you. Yeah, so here, if I go to the resource group and click here, and let me just see logs. So you can see there is something called as logs here, and I can create a log here. So, and there is a log type. So I should give a delete log and provide a log name. So demo1 log. I'll provide the same notes here. Okay. So the log is created and now it cannot be deleted. It cannot be deleted. So when I go here uh, to the resource group here and try to delete it, I should provide the resource group name to delete it. Delete. And so it is not allowing me to delete. You can see delete resource group failed. The resource group Cloud Shell is logged and cannot be deleted. Click here to manage logs for this resource. That means I cannot delete it. If I have provided a log, then I cannot delete this resource group. So see, we can provide the log in subscription level, resource group level, or individual resource level within the Azure portal. So this is how you can leverage this functionality of resource logs. Next one is tags. Like tagging means, right? There are social media where we use tagging hashtags, right? Like for an example, if you provide hashtag India or hashtag some matches are going on nowadays like India versus England. So if you provide anywhere in hashtag India versus England, then all the tweets or the posts related to that tag or hashtag will populate automatically. In similar way, if we provide a resource, a tag, or we can provide the same tag to multiple resources, and if we search for the tags, for an example, demo1, when I give the tag as demo1, and if I search for tag demo1, then all the resources where tags is assigned as demo1 will be populated. Second usage is if I click on the billing and cost, and if I want to see the billing report for all the resources whose tags are demo1, then the only resources whose tags are like demo1 will be populated. So these are some examples of using the tags. So whenever I created any resource, you saw, right, I was getting something called a tab where I need to provide a tag. See here, when I create any of the uh, resource, it's asking me to provide a tag. So if I want to give anything, so project is equal to demo1. So I can use like this. So resource type is resource group. So something like that. Or if we can provide multiple taggings as well. So type is equal to training. So something like this you can provide. Okay, so this is the basic functionality of tagging. So going to the definition, it provides metadata for Azure resources. As I said, like it is kind of indexing. You provide some metadata value and you search it easily. It logically organizes resources into a taxonomy. As I mentioned, like if you search for the particular tags, all the resources will be organized in a single tag. It consists of name value pair. So as I displayed, like anything you can give, like as I gave project equals to demo1, type is equal to training. So something like that you can give. Very useful for rolling up billing information. So I already gave you an example of billing. If I want to see billing for the resources with a particular tag. So these are the use cases of using tagging. Next one is Azure policy. So anyone have any doubt for the previous topics? Am I audible?
Yes,
Yeah,
Divya.
Dev, no
Okay, fine.
doubts.
Okay, fine, fine. So moving ahead, what are Azure policies? So Azure policy help to enforce organization standards and to assess compliance at scale. It provides governance and resource consistency with regularity, compliance, security, cost, and management. So as I mentioned earlier, like every organizations have their standards, some rules and compliance things. So using Azure policy, we can leverage the organizational rules and compliance things into Azure cloud as well. So it also regulates like compliance, security, cost, and management. So everything like we can create a Azure policy which says whenever you create any resource, so the resource name should start with demo1 underscore something. So this is a policy that it should be used everywhere. Or say for an example, for some small organization, they cannot bear the charges of like heavy virtual machines. So in that case, what they can do is they can restrict user to create a particular type of resources in Azure. For an example, if someone creates a virtual machine of 100 GB RAM and some 1 TB of SSD hard disk, then the amount will go in like lakhs in Indian rupees. So for a month, so like small organizations cannot afford this kind of resources, even though there are requirement, but it should come from some higher management. So what they will do, they will create an Azure policy which will mention like which will restrict users to create a high amount of like costly resources in uh, Azure environment. So what it does, it evaluates and identifies Azure resources that do not comply with your policy. So as I gave you an example, like if that organization has a policy, it has a policy of like the user should not create a virtual machine of higher cost. So it will evaluate and identify. It provides built-in policy and initiative definition undergo categories such as storage, networking, compute, security center, and networking. So by default, there are certain policies which are already there for storage, networking, compute, security center, and monitoring. So if at all you want to modify or you need to provide additional policies, we can always go and create additional policies and enforce them to the enterprise level. Now coming to the Azure Blueprint. Azure Blueprint makes it possible for development team to rapidly build and stand up new environments. Development teams can quickly build trust through organization compliance with a set of built-in components such as networking in in order to speed up development and delivery. So Azure Blueprint is something like because using which we can create multiple, for an example, we are having like a dev environment, test environment, production environment, and we have like multiple projects running. So it will be like very much hectic if we request for each and every resource and wait for it to be commissioned to us. So using Azure Blueprints, as it says, like it also follows organizational compliance. Um, so using Azure Blueprints, we can rapidly develop resources, like rapidly build and stand up the new environment as and when required in a huge quantity. Like it is not like one or two, but in tens, 20s, 50s, or something like that. It also it speeds up the development as well as delivery. So what Azure Blueprint consists of is it also has role assignments, policy assignments, and it also leverages Azure Resource Manager templates. So earlier I said, right, like whenever you create any resource, that resource you is having some configuration files in JSON format. So if you download it, you can leverage that JSON file to create a similar kind of resource within minutes. So it also has configuration related to the resource group. So the resources, like as you know, like resources are created inside resource groups. So all those informations are also there in Azure Blueprints. Next is Azure Adoption Framework. So currently, say it is like a framework by which non-cloud environment users can go to a cloud environment. So straight away we cannot go to the cloud, right? There are certain steps or certain things we need to follow. So after following that only, we can go ahead with the cloud migration and we can adopt that environment in our organization. So what are the steps in cloud adoption frameworks are? Strategy, plan, then readiness, then migration, then innovation, governance, and management. Okay, so these all steps are there. For an example, an organization is on an on-premise and they want to move to cloud, then they have to follow these many steps. So these all steps are mandatory, and apart from them, if any other rules are applicable for that organization, so they can also incorporate uh, that in this framework. So what is strategy? So define business justification and expected outcomes. So first of all, you should have a strategy why you are moving to cloud. So for that, there should be some business justification, uh, like why you want to move to cloud. Says for an example, few of the architects of your organization, they come up to the higher management and says like we want to move to cloud, and since the competition organization is also in cloud, so we should go ahead and move our resources into cloud. So this is not going to happen. You should have a like good business justification along with all the cons and pros and outcomes. Like if we go to cloud, then what should be the outcome? The management only sees what benefit you get, or how cost benefit will be there for an organization. So if you give a good business justification and the expected outcome, then if you go with this strategy, then management has to approve it so that you can go ahead to the next step. So once the management approves the strategy of moving to cloud, the next step comes is planning. So like everything should be planned. That's why this planning step is more important. So what it says is align actionable adoption plans to business outcomes. So you should plan like, for an example, you cannot move to cloud in a single day, right? Like the business will be impacted and users will be impacted, and so many things will happen. So many of the organizations, what they do is they slowly migrate uh, to clouds. For an example, if they have some 100 resources using the data center and users and all, so first they move slowly to the cloud, like first set of 10 data centers they move. Means it is like a planning. I'm saying we are not just migrating right now. So they should plan in such a way that the resources are not impacted. Like if say 100 resources are there, so planning should be like going with 10 resources at a time and moving few resources at a time. So earlier, like in our organizations, we were using IBM Lotus Notes, and from last year, I believe, we migrated to Outlook. So not all of the resources were in Outlook. They strategically they sorry, they migrated users to the Microsoft Outlook. So this everything they followed is this cloud adoption framework. So planning should be in such a way that very less impact should be there in the resources. Readiness. So we should be ready so that we can migrate to the cloud environment. So how we can use, how we can be ready? So first of all our resources should be ready for the migration. Uh, we should be ready with like a migration plan, like on what time or date we are going to migrate and how the users are going to be impacted. There should be a proper communication before the migration to the users about the outage. So all these things should be ready. Uh, Also your cloud environment should also be ready so that you can migrate it without any hassle. The next thing comes is migration. So in migration you need it is like if you have 100 resources and few of the resources you are saying are outdated, so you need some of the resources to be renewed in the sense modernized with the like new resources available in the cloud. For an example, as I said, we were earlier in IBM Lotus Notes, and then we migrated to Outlook. So this is kind of modernization of existing workloads. So we should plan to migrate our existing resources as well as to modernize some of the outdated resources as well. Innovation. So we should develop new cloud native or hybrid solutions. So earlier we had applications or resources running in on premises. So they were running in like the earlier model. So when we migrate to cloud, we should adopt their functionalities. Like if some applications are running in some application server, so we can try to migrate it to Azure apps. So we just need to provide our code to them, and that's it. They will take care of everything. So this kind of innovation also be there after we are migrated. Governance. We should govern the environment and workload. So like the administrators from Microsoft as well as administrators from our organization, so they should put in some of the policies and compliance in the environment and the workloads so that there should not be any security issue or compliance or privacy issues. Management. So once everything is in place, there should be a operation management for cloud and hybrid solutions. So we should keep on like making appropriate changes in our cloud environment so that there will be like no problems for the application or the data center outages. Okay, so this is the cloud adoption framework when we are on-premises and planning to move to cloud. The one Microsoft approach, it is one Microsoft approach for cloud adoption in Azure. Best practices from Microsoft employees, partners, and customers. Tools, guidance, and narratives for strategies and outcomes. So, for a successful migration to cloud, we should use this approach. It is in practice by Microsoft employees, partners, and other customers. Okay, so coming to the next slide, privacy, compliance, and data protection standards. What we are going to learn in this more in this topic. So it has Microsoft core tenets of security, privacy, compliance, Microsoft privacy statements, online service terms, and data protection amendments. Trust Center, Azure compliance documentation, and Azure sovereign regions. Like as in the first class, I believe I said like there is a separate Azure environment for Azure government cloud services and a separate uh, management for cloud infrastructure for Azure China cloud services. So all this we are going to learn in this. Security, privacy, and compliance. So yesterday we learned about security. So secure by design with built-in intelligence security, Microsoft helps to protect against known and unknown cyber threats using automation and artificial intelligence. So we can we can leverage Microsoft's inbuilt features, which helps us to go through this, get protected through cyber threats using automation and artificial intelligence. Privacy means we are committed to ensure the privacy of organizations through our contractual agreements and by providing user control and transparency. So here we are talking about the Microsoft as a cloud provider. They are committed for ensuring the privacy of organizational data through the contractual agreements and by providing user control and transparency. So as you saw, right, the security dependence, shared security responsibility and shared responsibility for infrastructure as a service and all. So they have the privacy contract that they will not share the data to someone else, and the data should reside only with them only, and the data will be encrypted. So all these things come under this privacy contract. And how they do is they provide user access so that they can provide the particular kind of security, so that only the users of that organization or authorized user can see and use that data. Compliance. So Microsoft respects local laws and regulations and provides comprehensive coverage to compliant offering. So what these local laws and regulations are? So recently there was something in news like Indian government, they are going to ban Twitter because they are not coming into their compliance, or they are not following their laws. So every country and every government, they have their set of rules. In India, there is something called as IT Act 2000. So they keep on doing their amendments in that. So recently they did some amendments saying that there should be some CXOs uh, should be there in this kind of social media companies like Twitter, WhatsApp, Facebook. So all they should have they should follow some of the guidelines by the government. So if they don't follow, then it comes as a compliance issue, and they will be like treated as per the government's laws. So what Microsoft does here is they follow all the laws and regulations of all the countries, and provide comprehensive coverage of compliant offerings. Like they follow the country's laws and regulations, as well as if at all an organization has their own compliance policies, so they configure it. They can also configure it in their environment of Azure. What are compliant terms and requirement? So Microsoft provides the most comprehensive set of compliant offering, including certification and attestation of any cloud service provider. Some compliance offerings are. So as you know, right, like ours is like CMMI level 4 organization. So it is a kind of certification. So similarly, Microsoft also has some kind of certifications and you can say attestations which are required by each and every this cloud service to follow. So what all kind of certifications they have is CGIS, Criminal Justice Information Service, Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, ISO, National Institute of Standards and Technology, EU model class, something you might have heard about GDPR. So this EU model clauses comes under GDPR comes under EU model clauses, CSA star certification. So Microsoft Azure has these kinds of certifications which provides all kind of compliance offerings. Microsoft privacy statement. So in earlier slides, I said, right, like they have some contractual agreements with the service provider and the actual customer. So it comes under this privacy statement. Microsoft privacy statement provides openness and honesty about how Microsoft handles the user data collected from its products and services. So Microsoft privacy statement explain what data Microsoft possesses, how Microsoft processes it, and what purpose the data is used for. So everything is documented in the contractual agreement between the cloud provider as well as the customer, like what kind of data will be possessed by this cloud and how they are going to use it, and everything is documented. So everything whichever mentioned here comes under Microsoft privacy statement. Online Service Terms and Data Protection Amendment, addendum. So what is online service terms? The licensing terms defining the terms and conditions for products and online services you purchase through Microsoft Volume Licensing Program. So whenever, for an example, our organization provides different kinds of licenses for the users. For an example, someone has E3 license, someone has F1 license. So whenever there is some licensing, so the customer has to purchase those licenses from the service provider. So those service providers have their terms and conditions, like if you have this license, then you will be able to use particular services out of the services provided by this service provider. So everything is available in this online service terms. Data protection addendum. So DPA is fourth the obligations with respect to data processing and security of customer data and personal data in connection with the online services. So this is kind of rule which which is defined in DPA, like what are the like processing and security of how they are going to process and secure the customer data and personal data using the online services. So everything is available in this DPA. Next one is the Trust Center. So Trust Center is about security, privacy, compliance, policy features, and practices across Microsoft Cloud product. So what it provides is it provides in-depth expert information, curated list of recommended resources arranged by topic, role-specific information for business managers, administrators, engineers, risk assessors, privacy officers, and legal teams. So it's all about the security, privacy, and compliance and policies. So everything is available in the Microsoft website. So there you can find all these informations. Azure compliance documentation. So it offers a comprehensive sets of compliance offering to help organization comply with national, regional, industry specific requirements that governs the collection and use of data. So like there are different countries, different industries, different regions where the rules and regulations are different. So this Azure compliance document states that it has all kinds of compliance offering globally, or global compliances, nation, a country specific compliance, industry specific compliance, and region specific compliance. So for countries like China, there are different rules. For countries like America, there are different rules and responsibilities, ru rules and compliances. For IT industries, there are different kind of compliances. For say some other industries, they have some other compliances. So Azure provides all kind of documentations, like what compliance can fit in which kind of country or industry or region. Azure sovereign regions. So US government has its separate Azure cloud environment, or you can say a different instant of Azure. So why it is like that? The government of US asked Microsoft to give them a separate instant of Azure so that it is separate from the rest of the world. So in this case, the security, privacy, and like all the compliance, so it will be separated from the other cloud instances, Azure instances. So why this different instance is there? Because it meets the security and compliance needs of US federal agencies, states, and local governments and their solution providers. So only this instance is only accessible for the US federal agencies, like their MPs, MLAs, and the other US officials like FBI, NBA. So all these agencies can access this Azure instance, as well as the other state and local governments and their solution providers. So it is completely specific for US government services. So what is Azure Government? It's a separate instance of Azure, physically located for non-US government deployments, accessible only to screened and authorized persons. So they follow this kind of compliance standards. These are the standards specifically for the US government cloud instance. Next one is for China. So Azure US and Azure China, these are the separate instance of Azure used for US and China respectively. So Microsoft is China's first foreign public cloud service provider in compliance with the government regulation. So Microsoft has a different instance for cloud in China. So what are its features? Physically separated instance of Azure Cloud Service operated by 21 ViaNet. So it is a local organization in China which is in tie-up with Microsoft for their cloud services. So even though it's called as Microsoft's cloud service, but it is operated by China's local organization. All the data stays within China to ensure compliance. So like China has their own compliance policies that the data should reside within their country. So all the data centers and availability zones and region, everything resides within China. So there will be, if you are going for the cloud certification, there will be questions like where and all we have sovereign regions. So the answer will be US and China, Azure US and Azure China. So we are at the end of our session, and this is the recap of what we have learned today. Azure Identity Services, Active Directory, authentication versus authorization, Azure Active Directory, multi-factor authentication, single sign-on, conditional access, Azure governance features, role-based access control, resource logs and tags, policy blueprints and cloud adoption framework, Azure privacy and compliance, privacy statement, online service terms, trust center and compliance documentation, Azure sovereign regions. So these all topics we learned today. Anyone has any doubts till now?